I'm very excited for this webinar specifically because I'm a data nerd and because I do believe people analytics is extremely valuable, especially in today's kind of workplace environment. And so our goal today is to help you uncover your hidden talent management problems. And my name is Dan Schwabel. As Zach said, I'm the managing partner of Workplace Intelligence, a thought leadership and research agency. I've led, over 70 research studies, so I'm very involved in the data space across all aspects of HR, some of which we're going to be talking about today. And I'd love to introduce all of you to Chris Moore. Chris Moore is the CEO and founder of ZeroedIn, a data management company that brings people and technology together to improve the profitability of business. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about, the relationship with people and technology and how you need both. And in Chris's role, he focuses on innovative workplace and predictive analytics that give people managers and their HR counterparts the insights they need to make timely and accurate decisions about their workforce. As a 25-year veteran, Chris has designed and implemented world-class analytic solutions for clients, including TD Ameritrade, CVS Caremark, McKesson, U.S. Department of Defense, and Williams-Sonoma brands. He is widely recognized in the industry for his work in the areas of people analytics, performance measurement, and talent management, all these really key HR areas that you care about and focus on as part of your daily job. So Chris, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I'm connecting in from the Bay Area, but on our side of the country, it's the Chesapeake Bay Area. So just north of Annapolis, south of Baltimore. So welcome, everybody. Happy to be with you today.
So to kick this off, I'm curious, and I'm sure other people are as well, what your inspiration was for starting ZeroedIn back in 2004, which feels like forever ago. Like everything before COVID feels like 50 years ago. And how has the company evolved since?
Yeah, it's been 19 years, and I'm getting all my LinkedIn congrats, because they all see your anniversary, work anniversary there. But prior to ZeroedIn, I was the chief technology and founder of a talent management company in the 90s, a company called Training Server. And we built that solution up to really help, our clients get to better handle on their training, their compliance, developing their workforce, and ultimately trying to meet their business goals. And back then, the key measures around learning and development and talent were all driven around Kirkpatrick's models of evaluation, maybe Phillips ROI models, Brinkerhoff's, and as that solution evolved and I began looking to what am I going to do next in my career. I really found that human capital management systems, including the one that I built, was data rich and information poor. But clients were just thirsty to get better insights, particularly around the impact that their initiatives were having. And vendors, including us, we'd always push them towards third-party tools, whether back then it was Crystal Reports, today then it was Business Objects and SaaS, and today it's a myriad of other tools available. But to get better information. So I was looking at ways, where we could build a platform that integrated with sort of these, disparate ecosystems, within the human capital space, and really provide a complete picture to help managers make better business decisions.
And as an industry veteran who has studied the workplace for many, many years, what do you see right now are the biggest issues facing today's workplace?
Well, I got a couple of slides I'm just going to talk to, just kind of give some context. One of the areas that we find that we hear, particularly post-pandemic, is all of our employees are working from home now, and one of the biggest problems is accountability, right? How can we keep? We used to be able to keep track of them in the office, right? We could log their hours correctly. We could monitor what they're doing. We could peek around the corner. The whole work from home model has sort of internalized the gig economy for businesses, right? You've got a lot of skilled talent that's just kind of a bit disconnected from the workforce, and as a result, that The other challenge that both the employees and the employer face is that disconnect where, the employees think that, well, management's not listening, they're not solving our problems, and management thinks that the workers are out on coffee breaks all the time, or just not as engaged as they'd like them to be. So clearly, the challenge is the return to office model, and of course, from the workforce's standpoint, they're wanting to drive this level of engagement, right? They want the individual to be as motivated and empowered around the goals and visions and business drivers of the organization, but they want to do it in a good social, what the right word is, but in a manner that the employees feel good about it. They're meeting their own goals too. We see a little bit of connection or disconnection between engagement and what you might think of resilience, right? Where engagement is about that alignment to the business, and areas of resilience and companies measure resilience, look at factors such as stress and burnout, and it's really individual employee focused. So those are some of the challenges off the top, and then at the worker level, and then from the technology side, there's just never enough access to the right data for the decisions that need to be made. I mentioned disparate ecosystems, right? So many organizations have 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 different people and tech systems within their environment, and they just don't all talk together. And then where another big challenge comes in is getting access to the business data so that you can actually see the impact that your HR, your talent, your performance management, your comp initiatives are driving. So that's a challenge. And then lastly, it's really understanding what story the data is telling, right? And what impact is that driving? And then at the end of the day, you have to say, so what, right? So what if we measure, so what if our turnover is 6.5%? What does that mean in relation to what we're trying to accomplish? Is that good? Is it bad? So you really have to put a lens on that and begin to tease out and look closely at the metrics that you're collecting, that you're wanting to monitor, and make sure they're the right ones that are really can be influenced, because there's many things that you can measure, but you can't influence it. So how is that going to change your outcomes?
I agree with all those challenges. We're seeing it too. Is actually a study that I saw this morning that backs up the first challenge that you explained about back to work. Mm-hmm. And the study found that 80% of bosses regret their return to office plans. And part of it is based on what you were saying about maybe they're not using the right data, maybe they didn't ask the right questions, and they just said, oh, let's just do this. Mm-hmm. And so that, there's a lot of pushback from the employee side because of that. And then based on what you just said, yeah, there's a lot of maybe data that's being collected, but is it actionable? Is it actually being used? And even if it is used, are employees aware of it? So it's kind of a lack of transparency too.
Yeah, there's some creative solutions out there that organizations are employing that, particularly on the listening side. We talked about the gap between the workers and management, and enabling survey platforms, to do pulse surveys and to really, touch the workforce in a way that just can gain that sentiment and that feedback back. And ZeroedIn is relatively unique in that we're able to combine the qualitative and quantitative information together, to give that complete story. We have a survey platform, we have our analytics tools, and together that helps build that complete picture in a routine way. So surveys can go out rule based, but it's really about listening to the workforce, and that's we see a lot of that happening more and more with our
Yeah, we call this
interactions with
employee
clients.
voice. And,
Yeah,
especially during COVID, employee voice got louder because the employee voice needed more help, especially during a tough time. And the employee voice is more decentralized with all that remote work. And so I think that we have noticed that there is this transition of more regular surveys and data collection. For instance, performance reviews, as you know, historically, it's been one performance review per year, but now the workforce, especially the younger workforce, demands more frequent reviews
sure.
and all of that. So that's a pretty big change as well. From a data perspective, what types of data have you found that are most useful when solving HR and workplace issues?
Well, certainly the sentiment is key. Looking at, again, we talked about, where it's resilience, looking at stress and burnout, which can be driven through absenteeism, tardiness. It's easy to track on an hourly workforce. The salaried workforce is a little more difficult there. But looking at the stress levels, the burnouts, and just really understanding, the overall workloads that are being assigned to people and what's expected of them. And then lastly, the business data, right? You have to look at the business data to see, are we accomplishing what we set out to do? And if not, again, what are those levers that we can pull to influence?
No, I like the employee engagement data too, because it's all this like juggling act and balance between, a company wanting more productivity and higher engagement, and then burnout and issues with mental health, right? And so it's that whole juggling. So for instance, during COVID, we noticed that, as productivity increased, people working remote, that affected work-life balance and led to burnout at the same time. So what might be good in terms of productivity could actually be a huge issue with people being burned out and then leaving.
Sure.
And one of the things you evangelize is this 4-step process for leveraging people analytics data to address these workplace issues. Can you kind of go over that for us?
Yeah, sure. So, the first piece is really understanding your current state, right? If you can't get a picture of where you are today, how do you know where you want to go? So, the best way to do that is through descriptive analytics. And if some of your listeners may be familiar with the different stages of analytics, descriptive is typically at that first level, and it's tracking what happened in the past. What do we look like today? What happened in the past? It uses historical data. This is important on the workforce planning side, so you get a current view of your workforce, and then up from there, it goes to, the next levels, which are more diagnostics, why things happened the way they did, predictive, what could happen in the future based on the past. And then the ultimate goal is prescriptive, what should happen in the future and how can we influence that, right? So that's where, being able to influence what you're measuring is so key. But technology helps drive all that. But that first stage is really understanding your current state, getting that complete picture, so where you are, and then the second step is really uncovering gaps or outliers, and we actually do this through looking at the data, looking at anomalies, looking at the outliers, looking at change, and then determining what the root cause is, because without understanding the root cause, and we'll talk about the next step, but there's no way to change. You don't know what needs to be changed. So you've heard the slogan, or what gets measured gets changed, right? Well, it's also true, what gets measured gets funded, because when you can look at the root cause and you can understand the impact that's having on the business, you can monetize the impact. And once you monetize and put dollars to the impact, of what's occurring as a result of your current processes, then you can actually build a business case for change that the financial people within your organization will understand. And that's how measurement turns to funding, turns to change management programs. So that third step is actually designing and implementing change. And sometimes this takes a lot of time and effort. These change initiatives are not always quick and easy, They can be very lengthy and very complex. And as a result of that, that fourth step is really the measurement side. It's identifying, what are we going to measure during these change programs? How are we going to hold the people who have to enable the change and have to adopt the change? How, sometimes it's people, sometimes it's process technology. How do we hold them accountable? How do we track it? How do we adjust it? And it's just cyclical. It's that wash, rinse, and repeat model, so to speak. And that's always been pretty important in the process itself. So
it's a very good logical way of looking at it, right?
Yeah, so the 4 steps: understand the current state, determine the root cause, implement your change, and hold people accountable, track and measure, and just cycle through.
Yeah, and from more of a practical standpoint, how has this process specifically helped you work with clients? Can you share maybe a client example?
Yeah, I think there's a couple examples. Probably the best is to use an analogy. Like, one of the best ways of, you can look at individual measures, but you can also create indices, what you would call a key performance indicator. That key performance indicator may be a composite of measures. A good example of a key performance indicator is like on the hiring side, whether you look at time to fill would be individual measures, cost of hire individual measures, quality of hire, however, is a composite metric, right? It's made up of multiple underlying measures. So that really becomes an indicator of sorts based on the factors flowing into it. The concept of a dashboard, right? But there's also the difference between a dashboard and a scorecard. So from a measurement perspective, a dashboard is going to provide you the information to change quickly. So you have a change initiative, your dashboard may provide you some, in the short term, identifiers that can help you, quickly shift, quickly change. But the scorecards are a little more longer term. So a good example or analogy is, an airline industry, Southwest Airlines, right? Your pilots, they have a dashboard, right? They're going to change based on their flight. It's point in time. They have to make adjustments by watching their gauges on their dashboard. But the flight operations crew, they don't have a dashboard. They have a scorecard, right? They're measuring everything from, on-time arrival to, all of the various indicators that show success from a flight operations. So there's a difference in scale in that the dashboard's a little short-term focus, maybe a micro view, and the scorecards are a little longer term, goal oriented with a macro view against the strategy of the organization.
That's a great example. And we talked about when we first opened this up about the importance of not just technology, but people. And why is it important to not just focus on all this modern technology, but also people when trying to improve employee experience, increase retention, and grow your business?
Sure. Can technology replace people? Sure. Can people replace technology? Sure. But somewhere in the middle, you've got to have process to help bring the two together. So it's by being able to focus, you need the process to help put focus on the people, because the people have to execute the process around or in conjunction with the technology. So there's a couple examples of this. At ZeroedIn, we have what we call, people would think of like a white glove service, right? We can give our customer a set of tools, just like they can adopt Tableau or Power BI, but it's just a tool that, without a process in place to collect and clean the data, to organize it, to structure it, to quantify it into particular facts, that whole process is something that an employer or the employees on a people analytics team have to do. So being able to help them in that process enables them to use the technology more efficiently, because they're not spending their time doing I hate to say mundane, but the dirty work. They're spending their time looking at the data, analyzing the data, and using it to make business decisions. So, that's one example. We were talking about engagement earlier. With our survey platform, we've adopted a process by a company called Secure Consulting, the 8 factors of engagement. And the difference between this model is that there's sort of an employer and employee side of engagement. And in traditional engagement surveys, yes, you're obtaining the feedback from the employee, but it's about the employer. And what the 8 factors of engagement do is they empower the employees to actually change and think how they can actually affect the business and improve their own life as part of it. So it has a more personal approach. So again, that's, it uses the process of the model to bring both components together. And then also back to, with our survey tool, we use it a lot for 360 leadership assessments and multi-rater assessments. But at the end of the process, traditionally, it's been a report that identifies, skill gaps, competencies, bench strength and weakness within at the individual and organizational level. And then the individual, maybe the leader, goes off and says, okay, I'm gonna select these, 3 or 4 skills. Maybe it's something I'm weak on. Maybe it's something I just want to strengthen even more. But there's little in that process to hold the people accountable again. So it goes back to accountability. So you've taken these, you check these 3 that I'm going to work on. How is that? How are we measuring the accountability and the improvement of that? Because there's little pulsing, as an example, that goes with the 360 side. So those are some of the areas that we're focusing on the people side, but through the process that links them to the technology. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, for the companies that are investing just overly in the technology and forgetting about the people, what are some of the consequences?
Well, losing touch, not listening to the workforce, doing the wrong things and trying to correct something that's not aligned. Technology is the accelerator, but people are the judge of success. Today's tech has reasoning. It didn't, back as much as it does today, right? Through AI and other methods, but the people have the emotion. They know what's right and what's wrong, for the most part. So that's one of the consequences is not empowering the people and listening to the people and getting their feedback as a result of the tech.
Yeah, a lot of the time now we're saying about how tech is augmenting the human experience and the partnership between humans and machines, and how that can yield higher input or output and productivity success for the organization. One of the things you talk about that I really like, and I haven't really heard of many other people talk about it, is this whole idea of the single source of consistent truth when dealing with tech implementation. Can you explain what that means and why it's important?
Yeah, there's lots of ambiguity in data, right? And large organizations have multiple disparate business units, in addition to the multiple technology systems. But those different business units all calculate something as simple as headcount or turnover, different ways. And again, it leads to ambiguity because one person's measuring something that they think is perfect for them, but there's no way to benchmark it and compare across the organization. So by, enabling a single point of truth, it's that single source of bringing data together from your disparate systems. It's a data warehouse behind the scenes, but it's modeled in a way that pre-calculates, pre-configures these different facts that are the quantifiable elements of measurement, so that they can be quickly retrieved and filtered and compared from that single source without ambiguity.
It seems like one of the big challenges too, kind of connecting what you said earlier, is there's probably all sorts of data spread across your organization, and that could be globally, different business functions, et cetera. That is a massive challenge to be able to collect that and the process by which you do that. Is that something ZeroedIn helps with?
Yeah, it is. Our participants may be familiar with the concept of ETL, extract, transform, load. There's various tool sets that you can reach out. You can either pull or have clients push data to you to centralize. But yes, that many of the more modern systems have open APIs to provide access to that data. Sometimes those APIs are not about extracting data in bulk, though. They're more transactional, where one system has to initiate a transaction in the payroll system or vice versa. So from that perspective, sometimes there's other approaches that can be taken rather than the enabled APIs to get large streams of data out so that it can be warehoused and organized and then kept up to date on a recurring basis. But yeah, absolutely, it's something we do for our clients. It's really one of the key values that are the differentiators that they find with us, is being able to organize the data. Our clients are mature. They've built dashboards and scorecards with Power BI and Tableau and ClickView, but they found that in order to do that, they have to do the dirty work, and it's very challenging, and they don't get enough time to spend on the business. Plus, all the ad hoc reports that come in from the business into a people analytics team is just hundreds, if not more, on a monthly basis. So they need to be able to respond to that in a timely manner, and having that single point of truth is key to be able to do that.
Yeah, one of the big hot areas right now that you briefly touched on is the importance of people analytics as it relates to, succession planning, having a strong bench, skill development, pipeline, all these talent management and kind of talent attraction, recruiting aspects of a business in HR. Can you give an example of how people analytics can help organizations better utilize their talent?
Yeah, sure. So, we work with the city of Detroit and their HR group, and they are combining their budget data with their people data from I think we're pulling from 5 or 6 different systems at City of Detroit, including their legacy mainframe systems for historical data, so that we could look at trends and patterns. But they're bringing in their budget today to enable better insights on the workforce planning side. And their overall goal and their direction is to actually include talent management and talent acquisition in that process. They have some key their key goal is to really build an internal kind of talent marketplace first, to give their existing employees the opportunity to step up or move up in positions that they're qualified for before they go outside and look for external talent. So, being able to enable that, the first thing they need to do is that, the descriptive analytics to get a handle on what they have, where are their skills, where, in what are their key job roles, and, the city's using ZeroedIn to help them with that effort.
Very impressive. But a lot of HR people kind of fall short or don't have the training when it comes to people analytics. What do you see as their biggest challenges, and what can we do to enhance their skills and set them up for success in this new digital people analytics world?
Yeah. So part of it is being able to clients have, one of the shortfalls is that they remain quite tactical. Right. They continue to, everybody wants to try to do things themselves. I do it myself first until I realize I can't do that. That's out of my skill set. So a lot of organizations, stay in that mode, and, HR tends to have to sometimes live with the tool sets that IT gives them. And there's always been this kind of not the greatest relationship between HR and IT. I think it's strengthening now with the focus that HR is getting, from the HCM technology side. there's lots of investments going into those solutions, as you mentioned. So, being able to step back and leverage partners to help where they can is very key, and not trying to do everything themselves. So
Yeah,
people are doing it better out there, and other organizations can benefit from that.
Yeah, that's what we've been seeing over the past several years about, like, all the stakeholders involved with employee experience and everything with IT, HR, communications and marketing and facilities management. And I think especially now with like hybrid working, the importance of IT and HR's relationship continues to grow and become more important. Mm-hmm. Looking into the future, since you've been involved in the space so long and you have this historical lens on how it's developed, if you were to, guess like what the future is going to evolve in, and you probably know because you're kind of working on features and improving, ZeroedIn and everything you're doing there, how do you think it's going to evolve to be maybe more accurate and useful to organizations?
Well, certainly predictive analytics is and artificial intelligence is working its way quickly, and vendors are adopting it quickly in a variety of ways, including the generative AI, the ChatGPT type models. Some of them are just dropping a search box to the real ChatGPT onto their screen. Okay, that has some value, but it doesn't let ChatGPT learn from a client's confidential information, right? So there are ways to implement generative AI such that it can actually learn from the confidential information without disclosing that confidential information to the rest of the world to be able to answer questions. So that's currently evolving. But even on the more basic predictive modeling, right? So one of the most common predictive models that we implement for clients is a flight risk indicator. It's a decision tree model. It's what they call supervised learning. It looks at the past to predict the future, right? And it can all be done manually, but it takes so much time and so much data to do that we can teach a computer, with artificial intelligence, much in a model, the ability to make decisions much quicker. So it's that said, if a predictor or a probability score is tied to Dan, and it says Dan's a high risk individual, somebody needs to take action on that. So what's going to happen? So, the model, what we use is what's called explainable AI. It's part of the model that allows us to see the inputs and see exactly which inputs were attributed to Dan to calculate that probability score. So we would know that maybe it's part of your pay, maybe it's your manager, maybe it's your schedule, based on the inputs to the model. So with that, something comes out of that. So what action needs to be taken? Okay, we're going to increase your pay. Are we going to have a stay interview or some type of intervention? Are we going to change your schedule? Those things get recorded in other systems, but it's not that quick for them to flow back into the model. So I believe there needs to be a way to, record, annotate, if you will, okay, we're going to make this, we see these issues. Here's the change that we're going to make. Here's when we're making it. Here's how long it's going to take for it to trickle down. And then this is when we have to measure it again to see if that change actually kept Dan with the company. So I don't think that's we don't see that rarely being done enough.
I really like this example because it really backs up what you said about humans plus technology. So, tech helping identify which employees have a flight risk, but then humans kind of being the intervention, right, and being able to act on, using some of the things that you said, some of the ways. And I also think it hits on part of your process about collecting and measuring and testing the right data over time.
Yeah, that's right.
Why do some companies not prioritize investing in their people, and what can be done to change that? Do you think that there's a role for people analytics to be able to make that happen more?
Yeah, again, it goes to that initial lack of insight that they have today and the inability to build a business case because they don't know what's changing. They don't know the impact it's having. They can't monetize it. So, that limits that window of ability to invest. And HR is a cost center. It's not a it's not a profit center. So that also lends a challenge. So you really have to identify what they're losing financially as a result of their current processes, and use that to build the case for investing.
Yeah, I'm someone who's been to a lot of HR conferences and spoken to a lot of HR executives and professionals over the years. You rarely hear the word monetizing. So when you said it earlier on, I'm like, oh wow, like that is definitely something that will hopefully trigger some people in the audience to kind of rethink their own rules and how they're kind of measuring and trying to improve and justifying a lot of these talent management efforts.
Yeah, exactly. We worked with Williams Sonoma early on in our company phase, and we measured associate productivity reporting for them. And, a lot of the data came from HR systems, right? Their hours worked, their schedules, about the people, what stores they reported to, but it linked to all of their point of sale data too, and tracked sales per hour against sales per hour goals. So, they were able to very quickly identify their top producers at the store level so that the store managers could give those top producers priority scheduling, right? And, where people weren't meeting their sales per hour goals, they were able to engage them in, training initiatives to build the talent that they needed, to drive the business results. And, that's a great example of how our clients use their HR and business data together, to improve business outcomes.
Yeah, so you're basically enabling them to produce more and make them less of a flight risk, which are both measurable and, in a sense, monetizable.
Yeah, you're giving them the confidence to succeed.
I love that, and I like how you think about this whole space. And I think really what's happening, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it's something a trend I've seen for years is, at least from the HR perspective, a lot more HR people are being hired from the business. So they're a lot more adopting your kind of mindset as kind of, I guess, an entrepreneur business person and someone who's involved in kind of operations and everything. Are you seeing that as well?
We are, yeah. There's a lot of site cycling, between different rotational jobs, if you will, right? Rotating in from the business and across. So.
Yeah, and you gave a great example about how organizations can use people analytics to improve talent outcomes. Is there anything else that really stands out in the work you've done and the relationships you have with clients that you'd like to talk about?
Those were most of the key ones. It goes back to our clients are trying to do this themselves, and they're just, again, struggling with the data and getting it organized in a way that they can use it for ad hoc reporting, that they can then use it for better insights for decision making, and then they can step back and really think about, how do we want to enable predictive analytics in our within our business, within HR, within our business. And then the service that we have with our our implementation team, they're there on a kind of a concierge service to help clients enable the technology more and more and more across their workforce.
Well, that's great. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot more advances to come, as you said, especially in the area of AI, which is one of the hottest topics in all things work right now. Yeah. We'd love to take any questions if anyone has it. This has been a lot, and a lot of great information and data and insights and real life examples. So if you have any questions that you'd like Chris to answer for you, I'm sure that everyone comes from different companies.
One of the things I'll do before we do that, or I can give some advice on getting started if that's works. And one of the key areas is just on the communication side. You have to communicate what's possible to the workforce. we talk about a data-driven culture, right? So you have to build a data-driven culture, and in order to do that, you have to communicate what it means to the business, what are our goals, and what we're trying to accomplish. I remember back in mid 2000, I went to Accenture. I visited Accenture, and they had a big training center in Chicago or outside called the Q Center. And in the lobby of the Q Center, they had, they had a light in the center on a table, and that light was an indicator of their stock price. It was green, or it was yellow, or it was red if it was going down. And I mean, I'm not advocating that public companies do that, because it can really set the mood when people walk into work and they see that the light is red. Maybe it makes them work harder, but that
would definitely put stress on a lot of people. Like there's all these studies about like McDonald's is red and yellow, and it makes you go in and out faster. Mm-hmm. So it communicates like fast food. As Margaret said in the chat, Q Center. She used to work at Accenture.
Okay, well, maybe she remembers the light. Maybe she remembers the light in the lobby.
You probably don't forget it.
So communication is really just understanding, what's our vision? What are we trying to accomplish? That's one of the ways of getting started. And then it's, don't procrastinate, right? Just, start with what you have. Everybody starts with the same amount of data, right? It evolves over time, but you have to start with a baseline. You have to start building this trust in your data, because without trust, we talked about it, we got ambiguity, you got people questioning it. And in order to start, and you have to go through this process of, there's some data cleansing. All the data is useful, right? Even dirty data is useful, but over time it can be cleaned, it can be transformed, it can be reorganized, and you just have to evolve it, over time. And then of course, lastly, that last point is getting into that one point of truth that, that's really where you want to end up, so that you can use that as your source for, answering the important questions that you need to.
When you think about your clients and who you work with, from an HR perspective, what area of HR is most interested or using this the most? Is it people who have titles like people analytics within organizations, or is there others?
We do find that, people analytics aligns it's a lot under total rewards. So, looking at, the workforce as a whole from a compensation, from a development side, that's key. Talent acquisition is also really keen on, because, talent acquisition is somewhat of a silo, right? They work with the people on the front end coming through the door, and they lose track of them by the time they're in the organization. So there's not a lot of messaging back from the HR system once they're onboarded, to understand, to get to that quality of hire metric or indicator that they would love to be measuring and looking at. Because if they have a higher quality of hire with certain sources, certain industries, certain competitors, that's really keen. So being able to, again, get the data to flow back and forth, and with that single point of truth, when you can bring your applicant data, your candidates, the whole hiring process together with the new hire process and the onboarding, you begin to paint, you have that complete story of what's working and what's not.
What about L&D? I could see this being very useful for that group.
Yeah, no, it always has been. That's where we started. Mentioned that they're still measuring Kirkpatrick and Phillips model for but working more on the impact side and trying to get to impact. But they do a lot of compliance reporting and kind of more of the descriptive analytics, so that they understand who's had what training, when did they have it, when is it needed. But moving forward, it's really going to be focused around skills in the talent marketplaces, and we're seeing that with a number of HR tech players coming on with those capabilities.
It's massive. We have a lot of research coming out on skills. It's a really big area, especially because of all these new skills that a lot of people need to leave, AI skills like we were mentioning before.
Mm-hmm.
And then the lack of skills, the lack of soft skills with new people coming into organizations and coming out of remote work. There's been a lot on that as well. So there's a lot of disconnects, and then organizations need to know like what skills they need for what positions and updating those skills. And so there's a lot of opportunity, I feel, when it comes to L&D, especially as you were saying before, in terms of understanding the bench and session planning, all these things of making better decisions about who goes where within the organization.
Yeah, that's key. And then again, people are not going to lose sight of engagement, right? So, because the workforce is disconnected, and that's where I think I mentioned the 8 factors of engagement that it really actually one of the first factor starts with accountability. So there's the 8 factors there. It's accountability, it's purpose, it's agility, it's recognition, it's care, it's trust, it's development, and it's resources. So, and those factors that I rolled off are much more employee leaning than employer leaning, right? Some of them are employer based, but it's really empowering the worker to be accountable for themselves, to giving them purpose, to giving them the ability, to be agile, recognizing them on their successes, caring for them when they when it's needed, giving them trust and allowing them to trust the organization, giving them the tools for development, and giving them the resources they need, around that. So those 8 factors are key, and it's all about measuring, right? Whether it's measuring the individual, rolling it up into indices, comparing it, benchmarking it, and then developing and monetizing change initiatives to improve.
Excellent. Well, it doesn't seem like we have any questions. Does anyone have any questions for Chris, or we're all analytics experts, which I highly doubt? We'll wait a few seconds.
Yeah, sure.
Anyone else?
Right. Well, we appreciate the opportunity to share our journey at ZeroedIn, and it's only been 19 years, so we've got a few more decades left here. So
Jill says, this was excellent. Thank you for your time. So, and Sarah as well says, thank you for this. I think you supplied so much rich information, Chris, that how do you even ask a question, right? I feel like you've answered so many questions that could pop up. I mean, you certainly answered all of my questions, and I had a ton for you. So I really appreciate you joining us.
I have a question. Do I get SHRM credits for presenting too?
I've always wondered that. I don't know. I don't think so.
No, well, thanks for the opportunity. I do have my contact information. If anybody wants to reach out to me, you can find me on LinkedIn or directly through email, or at ZeroedIn.com. So if we can help you with your people analytics journey, we'd love to lend you our expertise.
Yeah, be sure to follow him, connect with him on LinkedIn, follow ZeroedIn, and you can go to ZeroedIn.com to learn more about their people analytics and data management solutions to help your organization. Chris, again, thanks. It's a pleasure. Honestly, I felt like it just got smarter by listening to you, which is always a good thing. And I hope this has benefited the audience, and we really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.